Hello and welcome to this week's Fantasy Premier League tips for game week 4. I'm Adam Wilbourn from What Culture Football, joined by Adam Clery and Andy Murray from What Culture Football to give you all the tips you need for this weekend's action. But before we get into it, if you're a fan of this sort of thing, make sure you subscribe to What Culture Football wherever you get your podcasts from for daily football podcasts. But gents, we're into game week 4 of Fantasy Premier League. 2 men around this table currently sit second in the What Culture Office League. And Andy Murray's here too. So, how are we feeling so far?
This has been a game week 3 for me. Was a nice reminder of exactly what fantasy football is, because I did quite well in game week 1.
37, 40 points.
And then I had an absolute belter in 2, went top of every league I was in almost. And then, right, well, actually, you know what? Don't you make any real changes for this? Because actually, 3 looks like being a really good week, so I'm just going to keep it nice and gentle, and then just, curled one out on the nice posh rug, haven't they? And then died. That's basically 37 points.
I was going to say, we all captained Kane.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, putting a lot of faith in Tottenham Hotspur to not screw it up against the worst team in the universe, and they screwed it up against the worst team in the universe because they are Tottenham Hotspur, and they are never going to change.
Basically, I captained Harry Kane because he was about putting aside the whole Newcastle thing, because he was about to play a defence at home that shipped 3 goals to Norwich away. Mm-hmm. Surely Spurs do something with that, but you got to hold your hands up. Newcastle actually had a really, really good defensive display.
Yeah.
Spurs looked, we've done a podcast specifically on how bad Spurs looked and how troubling that is going to be for them. So, in hindsight, should have known better, but didn't know better at all.
What are you planning this week then? Wholesale changes?
No,
or tinkering
because
still?
I've done this game long enough now to know that you don't panic unduly. I think I would need 4 consecutive crap weeks to start thinking about my wild card. One crap week is not like the end of the world.
I was going to say, either of you like myself, where you're in a WhatsApp group with your mates, and there's already been one person whose trigger finger for the wild card has already been itching.
The thing is, because you get another one in January now, I don't think it's the worst idea. If you've made a really terrible start and you've had crap week after crap week, even 3 weeks in, I would go for it. I've done it before in the past. I did it in the season I won the league, in fact.
Shout out to a friend of mine who decided, you know what, sod it. Wholesale changes, wildcard, game week 4, made all the changes, forgot to click wildcard, and cost himself about 20 points. So
20?
Something like that. It was pretty brutal. Before we get into our plans for the week ahead, we should do a bit of business. We should give a shout out to Sagar Sedhain, I hope I've got that name right, who manages Shadow Recruit, scored 73 points this week, has 237 points overall, and is currently top of the What Culture Fans League. If you haven't joined already, let's be honest, there's still a chance to join and probably pass all 3 of us, so make sure you join. The link for it is probably at What Culture FC's Twitter. It's probably the easiest place to go for that. And on the one hand we giveth, the other hand we taketh away. We should give a mention to Osley BT from the What Culture office, who scored a grand total of 9 points this week.
I'm not going to laugh. That's not that many less than a man who took it seriously and planned out his team. I didn't get that much more than he did. So
Captain Che Adams top scoring with 4 points for him. I should point out Osley BT, not a huge football fan, but a huge F1 fan, and hence his entire team is named after F1 drivers. Okay. So that would make sense.
I thought he'd clicked Random Phil, which would make it impossible to get 9 points theoretically.
No. But Random Phil is doing rather well,
actually. Yeah, Random Phil's doing really well.
Sound about pairing of Chambers and Smith.
His banter team featuring the likes of Bong and Dong and all the usual suspects. Balancing out. But Andy Murray, looking at the fixtures this weekend, where can you see points being scored? Early kickoff on Saturdays, of course, Man United travelling to Southampton. You've got Martial in your team.
Yeah, although he's a bit of an injury risk at the moment as well. I don't know, Man United have very much, apart the Chelsea game aside, have so far been the Man United of the second half of last season, unfortunately. So Martial has been in wonderful form, and you had the good choice in the first week. Pick this guy on your team on the first week we did this podcast. It's paid off so far. Southampton are a bit wash. I've seen a lot of people transferring Angus Gunning in goals because he's 4.5 million and all this stuff. But looking at it, Chelsea games so far have been high scoring. They've been high banter. They're going up against Sheffield United and their wacky overlapping centre backs. So I think they're, bringing in a Mason Mount who is just a good player, it seems. Loads of people will have that idea. Same goes for big-time Tammy Abraham, 7.1 million off the mark.
Yeah.
Although he's going to rotate with Big Sexy a little bit. But
Well, this is the thing. I've got Tammy Abraham as well because Chelsea's fixtures beyond simply the Sheffield United game look really, really good. I think they've only got one of the top 6 in the next 5 or 6 or maybe even 7 games. And Mason Mount, as you say, looks like he's far too good for the Championship last year. He looks like being the one real standout player, maybe more than Pulisic this season. But Tammy Abraham, he has started all the games so far, not including the Super Cup. And if they're really committed to him and he's going to play every game up front for Chelsea and they're going to have a really nice little run, he might not be the best. It might not be the worst bit of business to do. I think it's still hard to know exactly where Chelsea are because I thought they'd be a lot more solid than they would be attacking, but instead they've just been this all guns blazing, have a really good spell in the first half, try and get all your goals, but really, really shaky at the backside. So it's difficult. I can't, in all good faith, lump in on Chelsea just yet, but I do have an eye on Mason Mount and Tammy Abraham.
Yeah, there's quite a few players like that. Mount and Abraham have already gone on my watch list as a result of that. And
you have a watch list?
Yeah. I utilise the watch list feature that you can just keep a track
Didn't know that
existed. I didn't know that existed.
Look at this. Come on, guys. But yeah, I mean, looking at your side, is it a case of rotating? Because you and I both went heavy on the Bournemouth players because they had this easy to start the season, and they in spin. Callum Wilson has delivered on occasion, but Fraser hasn't. King hasn't for me. Rico sits on the bench.
The thing is, I wanted to go 3 full players from Bournemouth and Everton because we did at the start of the season. Between their first 20 games between them, so only 3 of the top 6 were in there. But Everton have been fantastic at the back. Like this weekend aside, Pickford and Digne both got clean sheets. Digne got an assist as well. Callum Wilson's been excellent for Bournemouth, but Calvert-Lewin I really thought I was being really clever with Calvert-Lewin because Everton spent all this money on creative players who lay on chances and do things like that. Didn't buy a centre forward, then they gave Calvert-Lewin the number 9 shirt. Like, you know what? He's going to start every game for them. Obviously, Keown's come in and he might do that. But I think he started in the League Cup of the week, but he's done nothing. He's been 1-2 points every single week. And his price is dropping and dropping and dropping. I'm like, no, they've still got some good games left. And I might have to cut my losses on that. But you can't even do it with Everton because they've scored 1 goal all season. Yeah. Like, they got 4 against Lincoln last night. But you look at that side and there's a lot of creativity. There's a lot of good work on the ball. There's a lot of defensive solidity. But I can't see where the goals are coming from.
There's a painter, but there's not a paintbrush.
That's exactly it.
There we go.
Well, there's lots of paintbrushes, but no painter. One of the two.
Something.
Yeah.
The difficulty I have looking at this weekend, aside from, say, the Chelsea and the Man City games, it's really tough to call which way some of these games are going to go. I mean, look at the Sunday games. Everton, Wolves, and Arsenal, Spurs. A lot of people will have players from those teams and are not unsure whether or not, who they're going to perform, whether or not they'll have, the League Cup will have taken something out of some of the teams, or, with Wolves, obviously, European football. It's tough. It's really tough to rotate, and it always seems the case that the players you take out inevitably then do well.
Yeah, like the Arsenal Spurs one is a particular head scratcher because a lot of people after the other week will have brought in these flashy new Arsenal signings like Ceballos and Pepe, who has all the step overs in the world and who I already love. But they're playing Tottenham, right? And Tottenham theoretically are the superior team over the past few seasons. But
Harry Kane loves scoring against them.
Yeah, but they played wash against Newcastle last week, so you have a dilemma with Spurs as well because Walker-Peters last week looked like a really smart pickup because he was cheap and a starter and, safe bets in Harry Kane and Big Toby at the back, but I don't know, man. That game is one I will try to avoid at all costs with players this weekend.
It's a weird one because we did the Spurs podcast earlier in the week and they've taken 15 points from their last 15 games. So despite how much you look at that and think, oh, big test for Arsenal, you probably maybe fancy Spurs to edge it because they look more of the finished article than Arsenal do at the minute. But they're not picking up results. They're not doing particularly well. That could honestly be the game where Arsenal finally kind of kick it up a gear, because they looked unconvincing against Newcastle, but did enough with a weakened side. They've been a bit hit and miss as things have gone on, but genuinely a Spurs team that sort of has the audacity to kind of go for them a bit and leave a bit of space in behind could really, really get their pants pulled down in that match. So I think if people have gone for Arsenal players last week, I would probably stick with them this week.
Is it a week where people will stack their team full of Man City players?
Is it a week where the Premier League is happening?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm I've been unsure about Zinchenko's long-term future. He was the easy way into that Man City defence for everybody. I was sort of unsure about whether or not they'd keep with him, whether they would rotate him quite a lot or whatever. So I wanted Walker-Peters in because I thought he looked a lock-in for Spurs. But I'm already thinking about getting him back. Like, it was a complete idiotic move on my part, and I shouldn't have bothered.
Yeah.
Waste of 2 transfers, that.
City's a good shout. I think low-key, Newcastle might be a really good shout this weekend as well. Watford are terrible. They're washed. They've had a really quite a minging start so far. Joelinton literally ran himself to the point of collapse.
He was brilliant
against Tottenham.
That was spectacular, that in the last minute
Paul
when he broke away.
Paul Dummett as well.
Yeah. And after watching Newcastle, they lost last night in the League Cup, but they looked pretty damn good against what was pretty much a full-strength Leicester team.
Yeah, it wasn't a particularly rotated Leicester side. They looked very... Again, sort of finding that stability they had under Rafa Benitez where, maybe if they're not going to be all that adventurous going forward, they are at least incredibly tough to break down. And that Leicester side had Tielemans, had Perez, had Vardy, pretty much their...
Maddison.
Yeah, Maddison as well. Pretty much their starting attackers. And... I don't remember Carl Darlow making a save in that match particularly.
I was going to say, certainly second half-wise, I thought when I was talking about it afterwards, I was thinking... Newcastle should have probably edged that in normal time. But unfortunately lost on penalties there. Andy Murray, I've got 2 words for you. Teemu Pukki.
Yeah, he's still doing it, isn't he?
He's one of those players who I distinctly remember, I think it was Game Week 2 podcast. I said, Teemu Pukki seems like a good idea. And then I managed, in the time it took us to record this and then go around the corner, I convinced myself, I was like, I'll look good if he does anything, but I won't put him in my team. And then he did something, and I thought, bollocks, should have probably put him in. And then I think they had Chelsea or someone the next game week or whatever, and I thought, well, that's it. It's coming to an end. And he's absolutely flying.
Yeah, it's mental. It's an insane little thing to me, and it shows just how weird football is. Because, like I said before on this podcast, I used to watch it. Well, I didn't used to watch him every week, but I watched him at Celtic, and he was awful a few years ago. Now he's banging them in the Premier League and looks like an incredible goal poaching centre forward. I don't see really any. The bubble might burst at some point. This might be another Amir Zaki where he bangs them in the first half or a Michu and kind of fades away in the second. But for now, I don't think there's any real reason to keep him out. And the same goes for teammates as well. That Cantwell at 4.7 million looks tremendous. Goal last week. I think he got an assist the week before. Like, Norwich are great value at the moment. They really are. We
said this at the start, but you quite often find now, we look at what Fulham did. They stacked their team full of, they really spent money to try and stay in the league. We infamously did here. Did Fulham win the transfer window or something along those lines? But they basically took this side that had played so well in the Championship, completely dismantled it, threw in a load of players. Some of them stuck, some of them didn't, and they had no real identity or style of play, and they were absolutely mullered in the Premier League. Whereas what we're seeing now with Sheffield United, Norwich, Newcastle to an extent when they came up, pretty much every side that comes up now sort of realises that the disparity in quality between the bottom 10 teams in the Premier League every season and the top 4 or 5 in the Championship isn't really all that much. So if you keep your side together, you don't spend too much money, you kind of keep doing what you're doing, you sort of catch enough teams off guard and you're competent enough to play this system that you can kind of pick up 15, 20 points by Christmas, and that's half the battle done. You've got yourself in really good stead. Teams do figure you out eventually. You might have to change your style, you might have to play a bit more conservatively, but you can kind of ride this crest of a wave out of the Championship and catch other teams out. And I think that's what we're seeing with Norwich here, because the Liverpool game at the start of the season was all but one player, I think, had played the last game of the Championship season. I think the Pukki thing's quite interesting, though, because it's really funny when you say it in a northeast accent as well. Pukki! I'm going to get Pukki in my fantasy team, I read a thing saying Norwich specifically signed him, not because of his record or anything like that, but because the chances he did take at other clubs were very similar to the chances they created with their style of play.
Moneyball.
Yeah, it wasn't so much that he was like...
Pukki ball.
Yeah, Pukki ball. It wasn't so much that he was scoring this goal or that goal or that goal, but we lay on these types of chances. And he is not great. He's not a great header of the ball. He's not doesn't do this, doesn't do that. But he does seem to do quite well with these specific chances, and that's why they went for them. And if they're going to play that same style of football, then until Norwich get figured out, until this style of football gets figured out, it's going to keep creating chances for him, which, as we've seen already, he is very good at putting away.
Late kick-off on Saturday sees Liverpool travel to Turf Moor to face Burnley. Ashley Barnes, another name who's flown out of the blocks this season. One of the great
bastards of the Premier League, Ashley Barnes.
How are you feeling about that game with Liverpool players, especially? Because I think majority of people have got Salah. I look around this table and I'm the only one, I realise. I've stuck with Salah, and I'm inclined to do so again, possibly even hovering over the captaincy.
I honestly don't know how you afford Salah and Sterling and Kane in the same team. That's just baffling to me.
Zande Silva, mate. That's the reason.
There's your answer. And Button on the bench.
I've got Button on
Oh,
the bench.
okay.
I've got Pope, mate.
Lundstrom and Kelly on my bench. So, yeah.
It's the Liverpool situation is rather tricky because the defenders just haven't been racking up points so far. I always call him Alexander Armstrong. Alexander Arnold got an assist last week, and Andy Robertson, I think, is a solid source of 2 points for me every single week so far.
Same with Van Dijk for me.
Yeah, and again, it's the impact of Alisson being missing and not being able to play out from the back, a topic we've spoken about several times on here before. I don't think that there's such, the Robertsons and Alexander Arnold's are a safe bet until he comes back.
I will say Robertson, I noticed, has actually gone down in price, which, I mean, this year, 3 or 4 weeks into a season to actually lose value on a player is fairly extraordinary.
Yeah.
Calvert-Lewin, he's dropped like 0.2 million because he's done absolutely nothing. But Liverpool have been winning all these games, and yet Andy Robertson's now being sold off at such a rate he's getting cheaper. It's quite incredible.
Crazy,
really.
isn't it?
Now, I would actually say Liverpool they are a really solid side when they're playing at full tilt, and they will eventually start doing that. If you're tempted, I think now might actually be a good time to buy Liverpool players because their value is going down, so you can probably nick them a little bit of a cut price.
The Wolf of Wall Street over here, like it.
Arguably someone who's flown a little bit under the radar, maybe up until last weekend, is Sebastian Haller for West Ham.
Yeah.
I think he scored over 10 points, I think possibly 11 points last weekend.
2 goals, wasn't it? 2 tap-ins.
And he's obviously got Norwich. They're at home against West Ham, are at home against Norwich, and I think they've got another one of the promoted sides following that, or certainly a bottom half side following that. Is he one that fans should consider?
Yeah, absolutely. Particularly as I've just described his wonderful overhead kick as a tap-in. Yeah, I think Michael Sidgwick spoke a little bit about him. Said he brought him in at the beginning of the season as a potential differential, and he hadn't really done anything. 1 or 2 points in the first 2 games. Now, however, with an attack built firmly around him, £45 million striker starts scoring goals. Makes sense.
Well, as he's already scored 2 goals in his first few games, he's already streets ahead of most of those other West Ham centre forwards you very proudly brought in a list of in the past. He does look. It's one of them. I think it will take West Ham a while to sort of properly get on his wavelength. I think if you look at precisely the dynamic Norwich have with Pukki, I think West Ham would kill for that kind of synergy with a centre forward. They've literally never, ever, ever had it. He could get there, but I'm not looking at him yet because I just think he'll be very streaky. I can see him getting 2 goals here, then nothing for 5 or 6 games.
Very much one of those players that we all have who does well, then you bring them in, they do nothing, you take them out, and then
Well,
they
this is
start
the
doing
thing.
well
This is
again.
why I haven't gone for Pukki, because I thought he played particularly well against Liverpool, but not so well you were desperate to get him in your side. Then he got the hat-trick against Newcastle. Oh, all these idiots will be lumping in on him now. It's not going to last, And of course, he popped up with more points yet again this week, and no reason he can't get something against West Ham. And I did this with Jimenez last season. I was like, it's not going to last. It's not going to last. And I waited, and I finally gave in and bought him for like 2 million more than I could have had at the start of the season. It's just one of those.
We almost have one of them. You've got Jimenez. I distinctly remember the year that Leicester won the league. Vardy and definitely Mahrez. Mahrez, I went, he's going to get found out sooner or later. And that effectively cost me hundreds of points.
Yeah.
Have you ever had a player like that?
Ben Davies for a year in Tottenham was somehow one of the highest scoring defenders in the league. And every single week I was like, it's Ben Davies. He's like bang average top 4 left back.
One player that I've avoided this season, who I normally sort of entrust if money allows, and arguably possibly could be turned into this week, is Sergio Aguero.
Yes.
Because a lot of speculation about, is he slowly winding down? Is he, maybe not his career-wise, but in terms of prominence in that Man City side. You mentioned the goals can come from all over the pitch. De Bruyne, Sterling, obvious choices. And the Jesus question as well, whether or not he's going to be more rotated. Is this a week to bring Aguero in?
I think if you're going to bring him in any week, you bring him in this week because he absolutely loves scoring goals against the smaller sides in the league. Like, he's not... Well, I say he loves scoring goals against absolutely everybody, but Aguero has a habit of racking up hat-tricks with assists and getting... I think if you go back through all the top-scoring game weeks last season, I think Aguero's 4 of them. And they're in these kinds of games where he's just absolutely pulverised some like rabble 11 of complete pubes. Not to say that Brighton I don't think Brighton are going to do much better than they did last year. They certainly look to have their... Thing is, right, it's really difficult 4 weeks in to say anything about these teams because of this anomalous 1 win, 1 draw, 1 loss.
Yeah.
Everybody, with the exception...
What was it you told me? 10 teams?
10 teams are on 4 points with a win, a draw and a loss. Like, Watford must be sitting there completely disbelieving that they've done nothing, but also at the same time, they are 4 points off like the top 6 at the minute. Like Newcastle United won great victory against Spurs. They went away to Spurs and they won. They went up from 20th to 19th. But at the same time, we're a point away from Man United in 5th.
Yeah.
Like, it's such a baffling season that it's hard to really make these sweeping statements about, like, oh, well, this club looks like they're going to do this year. This club looks like they're going to do this year. You've really got to focus in on the individuals. Like, West Ham could end up 15th or 5th.
Yeah.
It's whether or not Haller's going to get you some goals in amongst all that. Same with every club that's kind of outside of the top 2.
Final question for both of you. Who is getting the captain's armband this week?
I've already captained someone, and that is Raheem Sterling, because I am a basic white girl and I drink pumpkin spice latte.
I will undoubtedly captain Raheem Sterling because he is currently the most deadly player in the Premier League, and they're playing Brighton. However, I will say that if I've learned one lesson repeatedly, it's the fact that Harry Kane let me down so badly last week, and he's in a much tougher game away from home this week. I should leave the armband on him because he will get a hat-trick against Arsenal.
Is it a case of putting the armband on Sterling to guard against other teams more than scoring yourself double points?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's such a weird little game week. I think you've kind of got to go
Play
first.
safe,
yeah, that's the thing. But at the same time, as like a million cliched people have said before me, fortune favours the brave.
Yeah.
So
it
take a
does.
risk. It's going to pay
does.
off.
I'm going to be there stressing over my team at 11 a.m. on Saturday
So
morning.
Captain
I can tell.
Pukki, that's what we're saying.
Yes.
Barkley, is it? Is this week? Yeah.
Barkley, he dropped in, I think, because of... I think he came in at the very last minute. That is the problem position for. Well, there's a lot of problem positions you could look at that team, but he's that sort of £6 million player. There's no real standouts as of yet. But
John McGinn?
John McGinn is the one I'm
McGinn is,
considering.
in fairness, has been. He got that goal against Spurs on the first week. He did the business against Everton this week. He's currently been. Him and Digne have probably been my 2 best pickups this season.
Yeah. John McGinn's this season's Ryan Fraser, inexplicably good Scottish midfielder.
And I was right about Kevin De Bruyne. 3 weeks, three returns now. Very proud of that.
Very, very good. Right,
Look how good I am, saying one of the best players in the world would be good at FPL.
KDB is all right.
Let us know your tips for this game week in the comment section below, or on Twitter at WhatCultureFC. Watch there, follow all 3 of us. You can follow Adam Clery at
Adam Clery, Clery.
You can follow Andy Murray at
Andy H. Murray. The H stands for Heaton, Tom, not the place in Newcastle.
Very good.
You can follow me at Adam Wilbourn. You can follow us all at WhatCultureFC, and don't forget to subscribe to What Culture Football for daily football podcasts. My thanks to Andy Murray and to Adam Clery. Thank you for watching, and we will see you soon.